Hey guys, Ruta asked, I would love to know some of your personal signs and symbols that you get and how you decide what they mean to you when you're interpreting the information. Thank you. So, symbols definitely do come up in mediumship, but I find that symbols are a little bit more prevalent when I'm working on more of a psychic level, and there's a little bit more of a different way that the deciphering kind of takes place if I'm working on a mediumistic level. So, first, we always have to remember that there are universal symbols, which are things that are almost universally agreed upon. For example, if you saw a shamrock, most people would associate that with luck. If you saw a dove, most people would associate that with peace. Then we have that level of personal symbolism. So, personal symbolism is based off of our own past experiences and personal associations. And while both can be relevant in both areas, I tend to find that psychically is a little bit more sort of on the nose, and there is sort of an element of kind of an interpretation, usually no brainer interpretation, as to where the symbolism that comes up in mediumship is a little bit more personal, and often, at least for me, in the way that my mediumship has evolved, has had layers to it. Now, one thing that we also have to consider is that we tend to have this idea that the spirit people are sending us these symbols, or that our guides are sending us these symbols. But and maybe there is some truth to that, but in reality, it really is our own subconscious. And as we have a nice blend with our spirit communicator, what of our own consciousness we can become aware of that has sort of a matching element to what is trying to be expressed, or what we become aware of that the spirit communicator wants to express. So, some of the more like no brainer kind of symbols, and these are things that have just taken place over time, or I've figured out over time. I always use this example. Earlier in my practice, I would see red balloon, and it was through trial and error that I found that red balloon means that either someone just had a birthday, like within the past week, or has one coming up within the next week. Um, Other symbols that have come up have been sort of evolutions of previous symbols. So, for example, if I see a mylar balloon, I knew because the balloon was a marker of a period of time that it had to be a period of time, but it would have to be something separate from a birthday. So, I've come to understand that it is the anniversary of a passing. But now, or sometimes, watching other mediums, their symbolism, if they communicate their symbolism in their demonstration, certain things make sense and stick with you and become a part of your symbolism as well. For example, I was watching a platform demonstration one time years ago, and the medium was saying that the spirit communicator that they were working with, they were seeing the image of a shaken bottle of prescription pills, which to them meant that either the medication needed to be taken and wasn't, or medication that was prescribed was taken incorrectly. That made sense to me, and that later came up in a session, and I instinctively knew that that was the interpretation. Now, there's more layers to the symbolism, and I think over time, Spirit tries to use as little input as possible where you can get the most out of it. As possible. So, for example, this last week, the clients that I was working with, all of a sudden I saw the image of a Christmas tree with a train ornament on it. Now, because oftentimes we do see things that are literal, someone might say, is there a Christmas tree ornament that is of significance? But I knew that there was a symbolic, it felt symbolic, it didn't feel literal. So I knew that there had to be something special with trains, but that there also had to be some sort of significance to Christmas decorations. And it turns out the sitter, the father for the sitter was passed, and In regards to the grandson, trains were their special bonding thing. And this past weekend, they had just put up the Christmas tree, and it was his way of acknowledging being present while they were doing the decorating, um, but also sort of bringing the element of including the grandson into the conversation. Um, so there's like layers and levels of things, and sometimes you don't exactly know, and you just got to go with it. Um, but sometimes if you feel into it as it happens, you can sort of parse out what's on and what's off when it comes to making sense of and interpreting what's trying to be put across.